Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Double 18 Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Nagishi, going solo today. First of all, happy holidays to everybody, and thank you very much for joining me once again on this next to last day of 2025. I hope all of you had a wonderful year, and I am very, very honored and excited to I've done this all season long, and thank you so much to everybody for following both me and Ken Fang on this wonderful journey that we've been doing this for almost 4 years now, and I couldn't be more thankful in doing this with Ken and for everybody to be following both of us on this journey. Um, Certainly, for those who've been following me, if you know me by now, I am a big Chicago Bears fan, and Ken and I have been talking about it throughout this entire NFL season. And this year, comparatively to last year at this time, there is so much to be thankful for what the Bears are doing. They are 11-5 despite the loss to the San Francisco 49ers in an exciting Sunday night football shootout game, which we will discuss in detail with this guest who have been on our show many times. He is the lead Bears writer and the draft analyst with the SB Nation's Windy City Gridiron and also PFN 365. I'm honored to welcome back Jacob Infante to the guest. Jacob, thank you for joining me today, excuse me. And first of all, happy holidays to you and your family. How are you?
Absolutely, Steven. I appreciate it. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I hope everything's good with on your end with your family as well and everything. It's a fun time of year, and it's even more fun when the Bears are doing well. So I definitely can't be complaining this time of year for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, what a difference a year makes. And, you know,
100%.
I can't tell you, the coaching matters, and it couldn't be more evident, in this year in the NFL. You look at the Patriots with Mike Vrabel. Of course, Vrabel had coached before in Tennessee before his unfortunate fallout with the ownership, and look where Tennessee is right now. And the New England Patriots, of course, closing in on number one seed despite the last place schedule. Jacksonville Jaguars, same predicament. Liam Cohen doing wonders down there with Trevor Lawrence, and of course Ben Johnson. The first-time head coach certainly has done wonders with the Chicago Bears after you and I had to deal with the debacle that was Matt Eberflus experiencing. So, let's start off with the Coach of the Year candidacy. Right now, it seems as though Ben Johnson's number has kind of fallen off, unfortunately, because of the loss to San Francisco a couple of days ago, and we'll get to that game in a little bit too as well. It seems like right now, Vrabel, Liam Cohen, and now, ironically, Kyle Shanahan, the man that who outlasted Ben Johnson on that Sunday night game, has become the top three candidates as we speak right now. Jacob, where do you put the Ben Johnson's odds of winning the Coach of the Year right now? Has it taken a massive hit, with the Sunday night's loss, or do you feel like he still has somewhat of a decent chance?
Yeah, so I mean, my opinion might differ a little bit from what the odds might say. They might differ a little bit from exactly,
Okay.
whatever the voters agree or may disagree with. Uh but I'd say I don't think Ben Johnson's going to win Coach of the Year, which I think is a damn shame. I mean, I think it's going to be Vrabel at the end of the day.
Mhm.
Uh but I think that uh just because I mean the Patriots had one fewer win than the Bears last year, and they've had like a record wise a greater turnaround. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I mean I'd put Ben Johnson at number two. I think that his season with the Bears has overall been more consistent, more impressive than Liam Cohen. I think that the Jaguars were coming into a different situation where they had a down year in 2024, but before that they were decent with Doug Peterson. So it's not like, oh, this is a bad team with a rebuilding roster. It's just a team who's down on their luck last year that they bounced back to relevance in 2025. Like the Bears were bad and they had been bad for some time before Ben Johnson got there. So I think that his turnaround, in my opinion, is a little more impressive.
Yeah.
I I get I get having Kyle Shanahan high on that list as well. I mean, he deserves a ton of credit solely for the fact that so many guys in the 49ers got injured and they're still finding a way. They're still, in the running for the number 1 seed in the NFC if they beat Seattle next week. So I think truly he is one of the best coaches in the NFL. I think Shanahan deserves a lot of credit. Historically, I feel like the voters at least trend towards, all right, who's a newer coach who oversaw this huge turnaround. And I mean, there have been exceptions over the years, but that's usually the thought process that they've gone down for sure. So I don't think Ben's gonna win coach of the year, which I think is it's a disappointment considering how magical this season has been. And I think that they're overthinking, one game where they were still really close with the 49ers. They went on the road and they were one play away from winning. Uh, the offense, which again, led by Ben Johnson, had an answer for every single punch that the 49ers offense dealt. And I mean, we'll talk more about that game for sure, I bet. But uh, I think that people are overreacting a little bit too much over that one game where Ben Johnson himself coached a good game. It's just more the defense that didn't get the job done.
Looking back on that Sunday night game, Jacob, where are you right now after just almost 48 hours since that loss? I know there are some people who take the positive approach, going toe to toe with 49ers, scoring 38 points in a very, very tough environment in the Bay Area where, the Bears historically hasn't had much success against the 49ers in that part of the area, especially, when you're, growing up in the 80s when the Bears and the 49ers were, competing for the, NFC supremacy. Usually 38 points. We all know that's more than enough to, win you a football game. But as you were just mentioning, the defensive issue kind of really got exposed in that Sunday night game. Do you feel a little bit discouraged about after that game, thinking that the 49ers just gave the rest of the league a blueprint to beat the Bears?
I mean, to an extent, yeah, and I think in the playoffs it might be a little bit different because those are some of the best teams that you're going up against. I think in the regular season though, you're not going to go up against as many coaches who are as smart on the offensive side of the ball as Kyle Shanahan. Like I truly think he's a top 3 offensive mind in the NFL right now. Him, McVay, and then you could argue maybe it's LaFleur, maybe it's Ben Johnson, whatever the case. But I do think that, Shanahan is definitely up there as far as offensive minds go. You're not going to be able to replicate that on a consistent, week to week basis if you're just an average NFL team. So in the playoffs, sure. I mean, if they face, the 49ers or they face the Rams in the first round or maybe not so much the Packers. I still think Matt LaFleur is a very good offensive coach, but I don't know necessarily they have as good of a team as either of those two teams that I mentioned before. So I think maybe for, like a true powerhouse, you have a little bit more of a blueprint if you have the offensive personnel needed to put up 42 points, I guess, on any given night. But I don't think most teams have that talent or have that coaching power. So, yeah, I mean, that's just me on the matter. I know obviously the Bears defense has its struggles and, whether it's, guys being out injured or whenever they come back, whatever the case might be, there's still flaws in that unit. I think, some in the secondary, certainly some in the pass rush or lack thereof. So I think, you need to rely on a stellar offensive performance to beat the Bears. Some
Right.
teams are going to be able to do that for sure, but I don't think that's a one size fits all kind of model.
Well, at least the Bears so far this year, at least in one game, they were able to go toe to toe, which it's understandable that the fans came away very, very impressed and have optimism that the Bears can at least offensively can go to toe, which a lot of us, you and I included, have never been able to witness that. It was always been reserved for teams like, San Francisco with Shanahan, and of course, Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid before they crashed out this year and missing the playoffs. Jacob Infante from the Windy City Gridiron, MPFN 365, joining me to discuss about the Chicago Bears. If you're watching this right now, please send us comments or any questions you have regarding the Bears and their offseason and stuff like that, which Jacob is obviously an expert in that field. And we'll touch on that a little bit later as well. Back to the defense for just a moment again. The week before, when Malik Willis came in to replace Jordan Love, who left the game with a concussion, the Bears struggled to deal with his mobility. And then you saw Sunday with Brock Purdy, his ability to avoid pressure or lack thereof, pretty much, to be honest, and to his ability to extend the plays with his legs and all of that. It seems like the mobile quarterback like Willis and Purdy, and of course Purdy's more of an accomplished guy, of course. Does that kind of give you any concern that maybe the Packers might give Willis a shot, more of a snap against the Bears in what many expect them to face each other in the playoffs in 2 weeks or so?
I mean, if I were the Packers, I'd consider it. I think at least in the last 2 weeks, Malik Willis is the hot hand.
Yeah.
But Jordan Love is their franchise quarterback. Over the course of the season, he's still been pretty good. So I certainly don't think that if Jordan Love's healthy that they're going to bench him by any means. But I feel like Malik Willis is too talented, especially with his athletic ability. I think he's too talented to just sit out onto the bench entirely. Like if you have any sub packages or anything like that, or even if he doesn't throw the football, or just to have the threat of his legs, I think would be a good call for Green Bay. I don't know if they're going to do it. I don't know, because they didn't really do it in the, during the regular season either. It was just purely Jordan Love. So I don't get the sense that they're going to, run that kind of trickery, but I mean, at the same time, anything can happen. So,
Exactly.
So that'll be, it'll definitely be interesting to see. I agree. Malik Willis gave them fits. Brock Purdy gave them fits. And like you said, it wasn't so much about the pass rush that the Bears generated. It was more the coverage of, guys weren't open. So Purdy's going to use his legs to extend the play. And then the receivers are going to improv and work their way around with backyard football. And a lot of the time it worked whenever that was the case. So those type of plays are really difficult to cover if you're a cornerback, just because it's not a set. All right, you're running this route. You're totally guessing where he's going to go. And Purdy just happens to have really good chemistry with his receivers. So a little bit of cause for concern. I mean, I'd say that about a lot of the defense, though, this year. It's just kind of, not. It's been a very hit or miss season. The takeaways have been massive. The interceptions, the forced fumbles, like that's genuinely given the Bears life and kept them in a lot of these games.
Right.
But at the same time, you can't help but wonder they'd probably be able to win a lot more games, or at least more convincingly the games that they'd have won if they were just a little more consistent in terms of stopping the run and getting to the passer.
Right. One thing I also noticed throughout the game, on the defensive side, is that the Bears looked like they were kind of slow, on the defense. It's not just that Purdy, whenever they tried to chase him, they couldn't get to him quick enough. But also, it seems like the linebackers. I would think that because of all the injuries that both Edwards, Edmonds had to deal with, and now Noah Sewell, unfortunately, because of the Achilles, he's probably, you know, gone for the entire season and probably most of uh, you know 2026 if he's still with the team, of course. The secondary, unfortunately, they couldn't keep up with the receivers. Also, the coverage was really really suspect. What do you think about the team's so-called lack of speed? Do you notice watching the Bears from a scouting perspective, and do you think that's a problem that they need to address in the this upcoming offseason?
To an extent, yeah. I think, if you want to start with the speed, I mean, I'd start with the defensive line. I think that like especially earlier in the year, you had Montez Sweat and Dio Dangbo as the two starting edge rushers. I think
Yeah,
that, I mean, Sweat is, I mean, I know his 40-yard dash was, half a decade ago at this point, but he's still, he's a good athlete, but sometimes I feel like he doesn't fully maximize it. Like when he knows what, when he gets out in space, you see the closing speed, you see that pursuit. But I still think there are sometimes, for a proven, for a veteran who's been in the league for a long time and who's making a ton of money right now,
sure.
sometimes I feel like the pass rushing plan isn't as sound as it needs to be. And like I compare, especially this week, watching Montez Sweat against, with pairing up with Austin Booker off the opposite side of the edge. I was more impressed with Booker's motor and Booker's processing speed. Now,
Yeah,
Booker isn't as big as Sweat. He doesn't have as long of arms as Sweat. He doesn't have the raw power that Sweat has, but uh, I'd argue his play speed is just a little bit quicker because he's more decisive and he plays with a higher motor. And I think that that's something where, especially Dio, I don't particularly think he looked all that explosive before he got hurt. And then you factor in an injury. I mean, we'll see how that turns out next year. But Sweat has the raw tools. And when he wins with his first move, I mean, he's dangerous because he has those long arms, that closing speed, that range as a tackler. And that's why his sack numbers are so high. But I think the pressure numbers are pretty mediocre with Sweat because it comes down to playing speed. The decisiveness and the tenacity which he shows off. At the point, coming off the line of scrimmage and the consistency with which he wins at the point of attack. I think that's relatively, at least for a starting edge rusher, kind of middle of the road. Uh, the secondary, I feel like that's fair. I think, the last game against the 49ers, the linebackers got torched in coverage. I didn't think that Tremaine Edmonds looked particularly great.
no,
Uh, and I think he's had a very good year, all things considered. Before he got hurt, I'd bet good money he was on pace to be a Pro Bowler. I mean, he had, what was it, 4 picks in the first like 11 or 12 games, and then he went on
yeah.
injured reserve for a little bit.
Mhm.
So, he was putting up good numbers. He was making tackles, and, even against the 49ers, he was still making a lot of tackles at the second level. But I also think that points to the defensive line's lack of penetration up front and the defensive tackle's inability to plug up those gaps.
Yeah.
So, uh, I don't know. That's kind of my long-winded way of saying. I mean, sure, Tremaine Edmonds had pretty good tackle numbers. I don't recall exactly how many TJ Edwards had, but I'm sure he had a decent amount as well. I'd say that was more the defensive line not doing their job and Edmonds and Edwards having to clean up, uh, more so than either one of them having a tremendous game. I mean, Edwards has never been elite in coverage. He's never had that tremendous range as a sideline to sideline type of linebacker, as a tackler or in coverage. And then Edmonds has that raw ability, but I still feel like his processing in those zones across the middle of the field make it tougher for him to maximize that full speed. So I think going back to your point, they could use, a little more speed. I think particularly off the edge, they don't have a designated, like a true pure pass rush specialist, in my
Mhm.
opinion. Like Booker might be, but I still think they need more juice off the edge, 100%. And I know that's not. I know Dennis Allen usually prefers the bigger edge rushers with the size and the long arms, but I think that if you really want to maximize this group, uh, I think you need somebody who can get after the passer and has the athleticism to win off the edge and to bend and turn the corner with those outside speed rushes. Because I mean, Booker, it might be the only one who could do that, and he's not particularly great against the run. So that's why, to wrap a bow on my whole rambling spiel, is why I'd look to draft an edge rusher pretty early, because I think there's a lot of talent here. There's a lot of really good speed rushers. There are also some pretty good power rushers as well coming off the edge of this class, if that's the way you want to go. But I think a speed rusher is what the Bears need right now, just because of the lack of the juice, specifically up front.
Do you think Dennis Allen will be persuaded to drafting a more of a speed edge rusher guys versus the guys who are more of a bigger edge guy who can set the more of an edge against the run, not so much against the pass rush? Because I do feel that Allen has done a great job given what he has been given to him. Of course, without the turnovers, this is what happens. It gets into a shootout where offense can do their end of the bargain, but the defense just can't hold up, unfortunately. And I don't think nobody's going to be asking for Dennis Allen to be fired, especially when he had, like I said, the players that doesn't seem to fit his scheme. But at the same time, Allen himself, as a longtime coach, he has to kind of, not necessarily bend back over, but at the same time, he has to kind of look at himself in a mirror and and figure out how to generate pass rush. And one way to do that is to get guys who are traditionally somebody that's outside of what you're used to being worked with. Do you feel like Allen can actually be talked into drafting somebody like, let's just say, for example, David Bailey of Texas Tech, if he's still there in the late 20s by stroke of luck, or Mason Thomas of Oklahoma, somebody like that? Do you think like Ryan Paulson, his front office can convince Allen to work with them?
I mean, I sure hope so. I mean, and I look at some of the edge rushers that the Saints, at least when Dennis Allen was either the defensive coordinator or the head coach there, a decent amount of them are fit in some of that bigger type of power rusher, longer arms type.
Cam Jordan would be the one with the Saints, of course.
Yeah. And obviously they saw plenty of success with that. Trey Hendrickson, interestingly enough, doesn't really fit that model. I mean, especially coming out, he was more of a speed rusher, not the biggest guy out there, but more finesse than power. But over the years, I mean, even starting with Haloi Kikaha, they drafted years ago, he was more of a power rusher. I want to say like 2015 or something like that. Al-Qadim Muhammad, they drafted one of those years. Again, he's more of a bigger guy, more of a power rusher for sure. Marcus Davenport, they traded up for. He's more of a big type of power rusher. Peyton Turner, they drafted out of Houston back in 21. Right. I mean, that's he won a lot with length and power. And a lot of those guys didn't necessarily pan out, unfortunately. And I think the ones that did, like Cam Jordan did, that you saw plenty of success with him. That he was drafted before, at least I think before Dennis Allen was in New Orleans. But
right. I think Allen was a DC with the Raiders when they had at least Khalil Mack when he got drafted. Of course, he has a success, and I do believe he was with Denver when Von Miller was drafted 3rd overall in 2011, if I'm not mistaken. So there are some outlying exceptions.
Absolutely. And I think that shows, and that gives me some encouragement that Dennis Allen isn't set on, okay, it has to be a big guy, it has to be guys with long arms, guys with power, realistically guys that suck at playing football, which I hate to say, but it's always just big oversized edge rushers with no juice who can't rush the passer. Right. There have been just a handful of those guys that he's drafted or had on his roster over the years. And I fear that that's what Dio fit right into that mold, and he didn't look
Exactly.
very good
Yeah.
before he got hurt.
Hmm.
So I think that shows you need an edge rush. You need a different flavor of edge rusher. You need to be able to mix it up and keep the offensive tackles guessing. Because if it's the exact same type of guy you're going up against every single time, that's like, all right, well, I can just, focus on getting my feet set, and I need to, focus specifically on getting my hands right. Because if I get my hands right, they're not going to have the juice or the flexibility to counter and then turn the corner against that. Whereas if you have like a true speed rusher
Sure.
on the team, then it's like, oh crap, now I have to I need to make sure my pass sets have enough depth. I need to make sure my feet are quick in the kick slide, and you might overthink the hand piece of it. Uh, Long story short, there are different approaches for different edge rushers that you might have. So I think it's just like a running back group, just like a backfield. You need a speed rusher, you need a power rusher, you need a guy who can do a little, a guy who can catch passes out of the backfield. Just to have that versatility up front, I think is huge. So yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, like David Bailey would be a dream. I don't think they're going to be picking high enough to get him,
Yeah.
personally. But even a little further down a little bit further down the rankings, like Cassius Howell out of Texas A&M. I know that he's, some people are concerned about the lack of arm length with him,
Yeah. Hmm.
but I think he's another guy, tremendous athlete, high pass rushing IQ, knows how to string moves together, and uh, had that expert use of his hands. And like you mentioned too, R. Mason Thomas out of Oklahoma, I think would be another good name. Damon Wilson out of Missouri. A little bit further down, Romello Height, the other Texas Tech edge rusher, I think would be good on day two. So, I can go on and on and on, but
Sure. Sure.
I,
Sure.
I do think that I think Dennis Allen has shown, maybe not as often as I'd like, but he's
Mhm.
shown that he's willing to go off of, to work off of his kind of archetype for a defensive end. And ironically enough, most of the time he's done that, it's worked. I mean, I know he drafted what's his face? Isaiah Foskey out of Notre Dame, a little bit
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
undersized, and that didn't necessarily work. But for the most part, every other like smaller, speedy type of edge rusher that he's drafted, most of those have actually panned out. So that makes me think like maybe kind of stick to that approach a little bit more. I don't know.
Absolutely. I just want, coaches, we've seen so many coaches in every sports fail because they're so hell bent on running their own scheme, or, try to force players, like a, rounds, round hole in a square peg or something like that. So I just
Yeah,
don't want, coaches to be, you know, dead set on, doing their own way, my way or highway type of deal, because we've seen that with Matt Nagy, and he failed miserably,
yeah.
not only as an OC but also as a head coach as well. So the most popular name that's being kind of thrown out there, of course, with the recent announcement of Mason Crosby, missing the last two games, of course, so solely for the purpose of tanking, which we saw them lose to another team that's tanking in the New York Giants last Sunday. Um, Realistically, can the Bears get Crosby, and what do you think would be the asking price for from Las Vegas perspective?
Yeah, so I think if you're trading for Crosby, I mean, one, you're going to have to do some adjustment of the salaries. I know I'm
Hmm.
hardly a salary cap expert, but at the same
Me
time,
neither.
like the Bears do have moves that they can pull off to,
Right.
to free up cap space, at least in 2026. Uh, and I think another thing that's going to help too is they have a decent amount of flexibility in 2027, and
Right.
they have a couple rookie contracts coming off the books, like your Jervon Dexter or your Tyreek Stevenson,
Sure.
but I don't think it's necessarily a lock that they're going to extend to both of those guys if either of them at all. I think Dexter's going to get some good money because he can rush the passer, but he's a liability against the run as it stands right now. Do you
Mhm.
want to pay that much money? I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
Uh, and then Stevenson comes down to the inconsistency. I mean, he got benched this year. I don't know if he's someone you can trust and pay, what would be upward, that'd be 8 figures a year probably to pay for Tyreek Stevenson, and I wouldn't do that right now. And on top of that, you also have you can cut Dio if he doesn't come back and bounce back. You can cut Grady Jarrett if he doesn't have a better year next year.
Right.
You have a lot of different moves that you can do to free up cap space,
Right.
or to add to the plenty of flexibility that they have in 2027. So my point there is you can restructure a couple contracts this year,
Sure.
push some of that off, eat some of that space, and then say if you cut Dio or Jarrett or even both, you'll end up back in the exact same space you were anyway. Like it's not going to matter that you restructure those contracts and increase the cap hit for next year, because you could you could get back to where you were anyway pretty easily. So I bring that up as, okay, maybe you want to restructure Jalen Johnson's contract,
Sure.
and someone is going to be on the team in not just 2026, but 2027 as well. You restructure him, you restructure maybe Drew Dalman or something like that. Guys, like who are at the top of their game right now. They're playing good football.
Sure.
I mean, especially Dalman playing at a Pro Bowl level. I argue he'll be one of the 2 All-Pro centers this year. But yeah, so like they have options if they wanted to trade for Crosby or another top edge rusher, in order to free up that cap space. You could try and trade DJ Moore. You could try and trade Cole Kmet. Those are 2 particular names that you could part with to get additional draft capital and
Sure.
save a good amount of money in the process. So they'd have to get creative. I don't know exactly the format, how they want to structure it, and exactly how much money they'd save through each move, but you have options to be able to free up that money to acquire Crosby. Now, as
Sure.
far as what the Raiders would ask for, I mean, I think a package would definitely include a first round pick.
Maybe
I feel
Austin
like,
Booker too, to replace
yeah,
him,
like
something like that.
I feel like they'd ask for 2 first round picks. I don't think they'd get it, just because Crosby. I mean, Crosby is an incredible player, but he's also I think he's coming up on 30. He's on his second deal already. He's making a good amount of money,
I think he'll be
and
29 next year, so he's
yeah,
still on the cusp of it. And obviously the Bears Raiders history with Khalil Mack certainly speaks to existence too. So there is a good of course that was them back then, known as the Oakland Raiders, of course, but the ownership still kind of remains the same. So maybe there is something that can be worked out. But I apologize for interrupting you there. Sorry.
no, yeah, no, you're good, and I think that it's one of those moves where I think you kind of need to do it. So what I went through like PFF's mock draft simulator. They usually have a pretty good idea in their formula of how much a player's worth in a trade. They said a first round pick and a future second round pick, or a second round pick this year and a first rounder next year. That either one of those would probably do the trick. Naturally, I feel like the more enticing package for the Raiders would be to get a first round pick this year, just because draft picks this year and draft picks in the same round next year. The ones in the here and now this year are weighted a little bit heavier. So, I think that the Raiders would push for that. I'd be okay with that because it's a late round pick. It's a late first round pick as it is.
Right.
It depends on how far they go in the playoffs, but it's going to be a late round pick regardless.
Yeah.
So I think that would probably get the job done. I mean, like you said, if you want to include a player, you could. If they want like a young guy, I know you mentioned Booker. If you can, I'd love to keep him around just because I think that he's as a pass rushing specialist, he's shown some juice. I guess maybe the pressures aren't consistent, but the sacks for what he's been able to do, like he's on pace for. I think I did the math. If he stayed healthy and kept this pace over the course of a 17-game season, he'd have 9 sacks this year.
Okay.
So he's been, as far as getting to the passer, pretty dang good. And now listen, he's got a long way to go as a run defender. And I think that that's something where you get a guy like Crosby, he's going to be a fiend against the run. He's going to be a fiend rushing the passer anyway. But and then just you can have Booker rotate into the mix, take some of Sweat snaps, keep him fresh. I think would be a good idea. I mean, in the last game against the 49ers, Austin Booker outsnapped Montez Sweat, and there are a lot of instances, especially earlier on in the game, where it was Booker and Joe Shoyinka
Yeah.
both off the edge at the same time, and they gave Sweat some snaps off. So uh, I'd prefer to keep Booker if that's the case. But neither here nor there. I think Max Crosby's a good enough player where you absolutely have to, you know, if he becomes available, you have to look into it and you have to do your due
Absolutely.
diligence and go through the
Mhm.
negotiation period, especially if you're a team who needs pass rushing help or, just help off the edge in general. So if he does become available, which is looking increasingly like that could be the case, absolutely. I'd try and, I'd push aggressively for that if I'm the Bears.
Mhm.
Uh, I know that when Micah Parsons hit the open market as a potential trade option, and there were rumors swirling around about that. Uh, my thought process was, all right, this Bears team has done a lot of work, this offseason building themselves up, improving on both sides of the ball. But the one thing they still lack is a premier pass rusher.
Yeah.
Uh, and I kept comparing it to the Khalil Mack thing. I know, you brought him up
Mhm.
just a little bit ago, but it's a team that's a new coach, young quarterback, lot of a lot of moving pieces, a lot of new talent that they've infused into the roster, but they need that one true alpha pass rusher. And I thought Parsons could have been that guy. Obviously, he went to Green Bay, and things worked out tremendously for the Packers before Parsons got hurt. Uh, but I think Crosby could be another instance like that. And the Bears are already ahead of the curve, where if they acquired Crosby, we already know they're a very good team. We've
Mhm.
seen the on-field performance. This offense is one of the better units in the league. The defense is shaky, but I mean they generate turnovers at a high level. Getting a pass rusher of Crosby's caliber, I think, would only amplify that. So
Yeah.
I think that's, especially when you have like such a glaring need and a star, like a perennial Pro Bowler becomes available. I think that's a move you need to make, or at the very least, do your
Mhm.
homework on and
Yeah.
try and be in the mix for sure.
Right. The Bears, like you said, they're ahead of the curve, and it's more encouraging because they have a quarterback and they have a head coach that's already proven that they can work together, and is somebody that will be hopefully stays healthy and become a Bears starting quarterback for the next 10 to 12 years. So there's an encouragement. And of course, when Khalil Mack was traded, the Bears were coming off a 4-12 season, and the impact that he had on the Bears in 2018 was exciting, but unfortunately was short lived because Trubisky and Nagy unfortunately couldn't do anything after that magical 2018, which was mostly relied on the defense and Vic Fangio. So hopefully, with what we've seen so far this season, the Bears will definitely do whatever it takes to fix the defense. One more thing on the defense, the interior is a massive problem. They have kind of given up almost 400 yards in rushing just the last two games alone. Andrew Billings has obviously been a very good, solid addition made by Ryan Poles. I do believe he becomes a free agent. Dexter has almost 6 sacks, but like you said, he is not a good run defender, and he sometimes get pushed a couple of yards back when he gets engaged there. How important nowadays is it to improve the defensive tackle? And then is it more so that then perhaps adding an edge rusher that you have to probably fix the defensive tackle position more so in order to get more pressure up the middle?
I think, look, I definitely think the interior defensive line hasn't lived up to my expectations. I mean, I looked at it as okay. They added Grady Jarrett into the mix. They added Shamar Turner in the second round. It should be a much deeper unit, and keeping all those guys, having that true four-man rotation, I thought was going to keep everybody fresh and like really maximize each of their own individual talents. That hasn't necessarily been the case. I mean, Turner, has been hurt for most of the year by this point now. Uh, Dexter, like you said, he's getting after the passer, but he's a liability against the run. Uh, Billings has been good over the course of his time with the Bears. I think, at least so far, this has been this is his third year, probably, I think, with the Bears.
Believe so, yes, yes.
Yeah, and I think this has definitely been his worst of the three. And it pains me to say that because I love Andrew Billings. I mean that he's a cult hero in the Bears fan base, and it's always fun to cheer him on.
Right.
And it's always fun to just look at how gigantic he is. But uh, it's one neither here nor there. And I think Grady Jarrett too. I mean, it's a signing that hasn't really aged too well. I was cautiously optimistic when the move got made initially because it's like, all right, I mean, he's not the Pro Bowler he used to be, but he's still shown in spurts that he can make plays. Uh, the only problem was the Falcons played him way too much last year, and he at his age, or at least at his stage in his career, he's taken too many beatings, he's taken too many hits, and he just isn't as explosive or as fresh on a down by down basis as they want him to be. And the Bears have kind of forced him into that role again this year too when he's been healthy. So you're not seeing prime not prime. You're not expecting prime Grady Jarrett at this stage in his career, but you're not experiencing fresh Grady Jarrett on a consistent basis because he's playing so many snaps. Uh, and I don't know. I think that that's one thing where it's like he's clearly on the downturn of his career, and then they throw out, 8 figures a year over to him. It's, kind of concerning. I mean, I still have hope that Dexter hits the open market in 2027. I have hope he can continue to grow. Like I said, I think he's going to get big money because of the pass rushing element of his game. Uh, but I think whether or not the Bears are the team to do it is going to depend a lot on how he improves as a run defender next year. Uh, but I do think you need to make some sort of move. I think Billings at this stage, I think maybe they bring him back, but I don't think that he's going to take on. Ideally, I don't think he plays as much as he's had to this year. I think he's more of a pure rotational guy than like a starter type.
Yeah.
Uh, I tweeted something out the other day where it's like the dream to me is the Bears get a pass rushing specialist at edge in the first round and then a run stuffing defensive tackle in the second round. If they
Okay.
do keep both of those picks and they don't make a trade for a Max Crosby or something like that, I think that's the goal because one, like we mentioned earlier in the show, there are a good handful of edge rushers who fit that bill as a late first round, athletic, maybe a little smaller, but very good pass rusher. And at defensive tackle, I think the draft is very good this year. If you go late in the first round, maybe Caden McDonald out of Ohio State, Amari Washington out of Oregon are two big body defensive tackles who can plug up the run pretty well.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know if they're going to test like elite necessarily for defensive tackles, but for their size, they're both very good athletes. Kristen Miller out of Georgia, I think, is someone who's going to go on day two, who's effective against the run. He's got some juice as well. Dominique Orange out of Iowa State, Darrell Jackson Jr. out of Florida State, Dante Corleone out of Cincinnati, Lee Hunter out of Texas Tech, and Tim Keenan the third out of Alabama. Like I'd be fine with any of those guys on day two. Maybe Keenan maybe more on like more day more maybe more third round or so. Lee Hunter maybe more of a third round guy, but Orange, Jackson, Corleone, those are big body defensive tackles who can plug up gaps. They each have varying levels of juice as a pass rusher and short area quickness, but I think the big thing is you need to have a defensive tackle who can stop the run because so many times this year you've seen Dexter, because he's so tall and kind of wiry for his position, he shoots up right off the snap. If he gets double teamed, he doesn't have the bend in his knees, he doesn't have the good weight distribution to stand his ground and battle through that. He gets pushed off the line of scrimmage easily. Grady Jarrett at this stage in his career just doesn't have it physically to consistently plug up gaps. Andrew Billings, gigantic dude, but he has short arms. So even though he can plug up gaps, he can't consistently make tackles because he has a limited wingspan, a limited tackle radius. So if you can get one of those guys that I mentioned in the draft, I think that in addition to finding that edge rusher, I think that finding a defensive tackle who can stop the run is paramount. And if they develop as a good pass rusher too, I think that's just icing on the cake.
Jacob Infante is my guest from the Windy City Gridiron, of course, also with PFN, excuse me, 365 as well. Follow Jacob on Twitter X for Bears opinions and content as well. Let's get back to the offensive side because we spent so much on the defense, and I appreciate your opinion and sharing your knowledge there. What is your overall grade on Caleb Williams' progression and how he has performed this year on a through F scale?
Yeah, so I think that as far as the progression goes, it's definitely more on the positive side. I think
Yeah.
that he was a little bit slower out of the gates to begin the year. I think the
Mhm.
Cowboys game early on was tremendous, but there were definitely some hiccups along the way. Like I
Yeah.
think the Vikings game to start week one was a little rocky. The Ravens game I think was definitely could have been better.
Mhm.
I know I got some flack for saying like, "Oh, it's time to have a Caleb Williams conversation," and at that time, uh, I thought that I mean he had gotten better compared to 2024, but the level of development that I saw at that time wasn't where I wanted it to be for a player of his raw talent and someone who's as physically gifted as he is. So my dog's going nuts. He disagrees clearly, uh, but all that said, I think he's since turned a pretty big corner in the second half of the season, and the level of progression is about where I would have expected it to be, or at least it's a lot closer to that.
Yeah.
So I'd give it a B plus. I'd give it a
Mhm.
B plus. This the season that he's had so far, the progression that he's had. It's it's so easy, I think, for some in the national media to be like, oh, well, Drake May took a bigger leap this year. Drake May's an MVP candidate. Caleb isn't.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's true, but at the same time, I think if this process and in year two, the process is ending with the Bears making the playoffs and winning the division, and Caleb getting better in the process, that's something I'm happy with. And
Yeah.
I think in year three, if that's something, if it continues to develop, they win the division again, or at least make the playoffs again, and Caleb truly, makes it into that top 10 quarterback status, I'm
Mhm.
going to be really happy. I wouldn't care where Drake May ends up. I wouldn't care how Jaden Daniels does
Yeah.
or,
Or Michael
you know,
Penix or Bo Nix and the others too. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Like that wouldn't necessarily bug me as much. If I come back to that, like the 2004 draft class of quarterbacks where, look, as far as pure talent and success goes, I'd rank Eli Manning behind both Philip Rivers and Ben Roethlisberger. Uh, But and Eli was the first pick in that class, but Eli ended up getting 2 Super Bowls. I don't think that, I don't think the Giants regret that decision at all.
No.
So, it's all relative to the team's success. If Caleb helps the Bears win a lot of games, which this year he has, then I don't care what happens in the draft class around him. I think there's obviously still room for Caleb to grow,
Yeah.
but I I don't think of that now, like now seeing how many games they've won and how Caleb has stepped up in the clutch in the most important moments of each game,
Mhm.
for the most part this season. I don't care so much that he isn't at his full potential yet because he's growing. And I think the fact that the Bears are as successful as they are and as competitive as they are about again with just about any team in the NFL, without their quarterback at full power, I think that's really enticing for their long-term success because as Caleb continues to be more experienced and he continues to grow, I think the sky's the limit for him and the Bears offense. So I've been pretty pleased with Caleb's progression this year, especially in the second half of the year, 100%.
Mhm.
Uh, so I'd give that a B plus for sure, as far as how he's jumped from this year to next year. You could argue maybe an A minus, I guess.
Right.
It's neither here nor there. It's just a difference of letter. It's not a big difference, I feel like. But overall, though, it's definitely been impressive returns, and I think that uh, last off season it was there are things that were pretty clear. It's sack avoidance. Uh, Above all else was the big thing, making sure that you're not costing your team those big plays. He's been tremendous at that. He's been one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the NFL at avoiding sacks this year. Uh, Whether it's knowing when to take off, when to scramble, when to extend the play, when to throw the ball away, which I think that's something that's skewed his completion percentage a little bit.
Yeah.
I looked into it the other day. He actually leads the NFL in thrown away passes this year. It's like he's number one above all else. So I mean, yeah, there's some instances where, on the intermediate ball, maybe he airmails a guy every once in a while. Like that one pass to Loveland against the 49ers, for example. But for the most part, I think the completion percentage doesn't tell the full story, and he's been a lot more efficient this year. So I'd take that. I'd take a throwaway. I'd take an incompletion over a sack or an interception 10 times out of 10. So uh, there's definitely been a lot to like about Caleb this year and his progression and how he's gotten better. I think that if he continues to work on that intermediate touch this
Yeah.
offseason or this coming offseason, then I think that would be his opportunity to, really take it to the next level even.
Mhm. Um, as far as Ben Johnson, certainly the success that he has done is amazing, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, it does come with a price. Um, a lot of the already certain articles are being talked about some of the coaches expected to defect. Realistically, where do you see some of the coaches? What are some of the names do you think that would end up leaving, and how do you think it's sustainable for Ben Johnson to continue to put together a staff that could maybe not as good as the one that he put together this year, but as long as he's calling the plays and he stays there, it really doesn't concern you at all. Where do you sit on that?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say I'm super concerned. I think that honestly, the big thing right now is that both the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator are probably going to be sticking around. Like, I'd be surprised if Declan Doyle's had 1 year as an offensive coordinator and he's not calling plays. Uh,
Right.
I think that having him in the building, having him as a mind in that organization is huge. It's very helpful and it's working clearly.
Mhm.
Uh, but I don't think he's going to get any head coaching offers this year. I think it's way too soon for that. And they could, teams could entice him with, oh, you can be an offensive coordinator here, but we'll let you call the plays. The Bears could block that, and I think they would. Where if it's a lateral move in any case, if it's an offensive coordinator interviewing for an offensive coordinator role, the Bears could block it, and I think they would and they should.
Yeah.
And then Dennis Allen's already been a head coach twice. Like, nobody's going to go back to that. You know, he's going to stick at the coordinator level probably for the remainder
Right.
of his
Hoping to become
career.
the next Steve Spagnuolo or something like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
Right.
I think that's the goal here too, where you have someone who's been a head coach before, knows what it takes, didn't work out for one reason or another, but at this stage, given how long, he's been in the league, he's a little bit on the older side. But you look at Spagnuolo, you look at Vic Fangio, like defensive
Mhm.
lifers, guys like that who have had those head coaching looks, didn't work out, go back to defense, stick to what you're good at. Uh, I think that's definitely ideal. So as far as the assistants go, I mean, yeah, obviously there are some names where it makes sense. I know Jonathan Jones from CBS Sports,
Right.
floated a couple guys. Al Harris, the DB's coach, obviously being a big one. Eric Bieniemy, the running backs coach, being a big one as well.
Hmm.
Uh, I think Press Taylor, the passing game coordinator, and there's one more there. I'm trying to think of the
JT
exact.
Barrett, I think.
Yeah. JT Barrett, the QB's coach. So that was yeah, I mean, those guys, if they get coordinator looks, obviously, happy for them. There's nothing you can do when it comes to they want to interview a coach for a promotion. The Bears can't block that. So if Al Harris, for example, they want to hire him as a defensive coordinator. The Bears can't block it. So
Mhm.
uh, I think, obviously it would be a bummer, but at the same time, I think that between Dennis Allen's experience in New Orleans and with the Raiders, someone who's been around for a long time, I think he's someone who's going to have a pretty deep coaching tree or knowledge of guys who can succeed. So I trust him pretty well. And then Ben Johnson, obviously, between the guys he's worked with in Detroit, maybe if there's some guys from uh, who went with Aaron Glenn over to the Jets. If they start over
Tanner
completely,
Engelstad, I believe.
yeah. I don't know for sure how to pronounce his name, but yeah, Tanner is the OC with the Jets right now.
Right.
If the Jets decide to go scorched earth and start over with Aaron Glenn after one season,
Right.
uh, then they could try and bring him in as like a passing game coordinator, a QB's coach, or whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
Maybe you try Aaron Glenn. Try to if a team doesn't want to bring him in as a defensive coordinator, then entice him. Hey, you can be our assistant coach, and I don't know. I don't know for sure. Defensive passing game coordinator or something like that. I don't know for sure, but
Mhm.
they'll have options. And yes, it would sting to have like any of those guys leave, especially Bieniemy or Harris. But I think that Ben Johnson knows enough guys. He's worked with enough guys, and the connections between Dan Campbell and Sean Payton and Aaron Glenn and everyone that Dennis Allen's worked with over the years. I think they'd be fine. I wouldn't worry about it too much, especially at the like assistant coach level. It'd be one thing if it's a coordinator, guys calling plays and stuff like that. But I think it's a little, luckily the stakes are a little less high uh, for the Bears this go around.
Mhm. Yeah, let's hope that the success of this year may convince the some of the assistants. As great as a promotion is to call offense or defense, sometimes the grass isn't always greener,
Yeah.
and hopefully that you could come back and try and win a Super Bowl in 2026, which would definitely enhance your credibility moving forward as well. All right, let's do some couple of lightning round questions with regards to where the Bears are, Bears offseason related stuff as well. DJ Moore, what do you think you can get for him in a trade?
I think it depends on the adjustment. Like if it's a post June 1st trade, the Bears are going to save a lot more money off of that.
Yeah,
And whoever they trade him to is going to be taking a lot more of that salary.
sure.
So I think off of that, factoring the salary, that would hurt the return a little bit more. But it's a price you have to pay, I guess. Uh, if the Bears, I'd have to check, and I don't know how much money they'd save just like a regular pre June 1st trade. I think if they do that, they could get like a late second, early third for him. Uh, because he's clearly someone who can still contribute. I think it's more. He's not at the same level as he was whatever that was in 2023, where he's getting like 1,300 yards. Like I don't think he's
Mhm.
ever going to top those numbers again. But I do think he could reach the 1,000-yard mark again for sure in an offense with fewer weapons that he's, competing for touches with. Uh, say, like I did a mock off season. I had him going to the Titans because the Titans have a ton of cap space,
Sure.
not a lot of weapons. They need someone who Cam Ward can consistently trust. And I think if maybe if they force the other team to take on a little bit more of that salary, it would drop maybe like a 4th-round pick or something. I know Debo ended up getting traded for a 5th
Fifth
round
round.
pick.
Yeah, fifth round.
Yeah, a 5th round pick. So I don't know. I value DJ a little bit more than that. I don't think it's not going to be a 1st-round pick by any means. Maybe you end
Oh.
up getting I think a 4th-round pick could be fair, especially depending on the the salary that the other team would end up eating. But I'd say 4th-round pick is safe. Maybe a third if it's like a late 3rd-round pick.
Sure.
But that's realistically
That's
probably the
that's a
range.
more of a realistic.
Yeah. I'd start off and ask for a second round pick, but I don't think you're gonna get that. So if you can get a third, I'd be very happy. A fourth, it'd be like, all right, well,
Yeah.
that's another depth pick, and you're freeing up a lot of money, and you can use that on a defensive lineman. So it wouldn't be a haul that's like this is franchise changing, but I think the most important thing is freeing the money off the books.
Absolutely. Cole Kmet, what do you think? Fourth round too?
Give or take, I'd say a fourth rounder's fair. Maybe you cut down to a fifth rounder for him. I don't know. I my sentiments about the same with Kmet, where I think his production, or I think he's a little better than what his production this season has been because of just how many names they have, and how many guys have been competing for targets this year. But he's relatively inexpensive. Like I think, especially in a trade, I think it's something like the Bears they'd eat up $3 million in cap space by trading him, and they'd save like $7 million. So if that means if you're a team, you're acquiring Cole Kmet on a $7 million a year salary, I think that's pretty good value. So you might be able to get, even though I'd say Moore's a more valuable, just pure player than Kmet, I think you can get a similar fourth round range for Kmet. Just because, he's still I still believe he's got a couple, maybe like 3 more good years in him or something like that after this year. Like once he reaches 30, give or take. But yeah, I mean, I think fourth round pick's about fair.
All right. Quick yes or no. Swift, does he stay after this year?
Yes. I previously thought no, but he's been fantastic in this new offense with a better offensive line, and he's improved a lot. So I'd say yes.
Edmonds.
See,
yes, but I would be like yes, only if he reworks the deal or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like maybe if you restructure it to convert more of that money into like signing bonus rather than like guaranteed salary, and then you free more cap space after that, I'd be fine with that. I don't think that'd be an issue for Edmonds. I mean, that just means you get the money up front instead of like over the course of the the weeks and months, whatever. But yeah, I think he stays. I don't know at this rate. I don't, because his contract expires in I think 2027. At this rate, I don't think he gets extended. But at the same time, I don't know if the Bears have enough resources where they could find a replacement right now. And his ability to make plays and coverage is valuable. So I'd say probably not.
Edwards,
I think stays as well. I think I don't think. Without pulling it up, I don't think there's as much flexibility with moving off of his contract because they just extended him last offseason. So
yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So I think it'd be a little tougher to move off of that. But yeah, I think he's someone who sticks around for another year. 2027 comes around, I don't know, but I think for next year he's safe.
Any concerns with Odunze's future with the Bears?
I mean, not particularly. I think definitely the injury muddied things up a little bit. I still look at his early season pace and I'm like, all right, that's what he can be. That's what I think he should be in the NFL. I wouldn't be shocked, though, if Luther ends up being the wide receiver 1 for the Bears, and if Odunze, if he's like a good wide receiver 2, like a T. Higgins level type of receiver who can hit 1,000 yards or at least flirt with 900 consistently over a healthy season, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you'd hope for a little bit more out of a number 9 overall pick, but that's far from the worst potential outcome. I'm not particularly worried right now. I think that, his second year, a little bit up and down. I still think there was growth compared to year 1. So I'm still optimistic. I know he was over at one point he was at a pace of like 1,100, 1,200 receiving yards for the year. His production dropped off a tiny bit and then he got hurt. So obviously that, throws a wrench into things, but I'm not too worried right now. Like maybe if year
Mhm.
3, if there's not another leap that comes out of it, then I'd start to be concerned. Like if this is the exact season he has in year 3, then it's like, I don't think we can pick up the 5th year option on him.
Right.
But I'm still optimistic with, how young he is, how physically gifted he is, and the
Yeah.
flashes he's shown as a, separator, uh, that he can get the job done. I just want to see that contested catch ability we saw at Washington. It hasn't translated over to the Bears, or hasn't translated over to the NFL. So that's one thing I'd want to see him work on this year. But
Yeah.
the flashes are there. The flashes are there.
Give me your 3 draft crushes for the Bears.
Oh, that's tough. Okay, so I'm gonna go. Let's see. And again, I'm sure there are more, but I'm just going, off the top of my head. Guys I think could be in that 20s ish range. Cassius Howell, the edge rusher out of A&M I mentioned earlier. I mean, arm length be damned. He can really get after the pass rusher. He can really get after the passer. Tremendous athlete, high football IQ, knows how to string moves together. Uh, Defensive tackle, I'd say honestly, Daryl Jackson Jr. on day 2 out of Florida. I mean, long arms, just a massive dude, tough to move around at the point of attack. Not
Hmm.
the flashiest pass rusher, but he's someone who has the size, the length, but also the spatial awareness and the weight distribution needed to stand his ground, eat up gaps, and then stack and shed blocks to make tackles against the run. So, and then if I had to go with one more, I guess I'll throw a running back in there, just for the sake of it. I'll go with a day 3 guy I like. Adam Randall out of Clemson is a guy that I like a little bit later. So he's someone, he started off as a wide receiver, actually. He was a pretty highly touted recruit for Clemson at wide receiver, played a little bit there. He made the switch over to running back. I don't remember why, but this is really his first year of true collegiate rushing production. And he's done a really good job with it. He's like 6'2", about 230, just, a massive individual, but he's someone who also has that impressive uh, straight line speed, that burst out of the backfield, that toughness, that contact balance. The vision's a little bit hit or miss, as you'd expect for a guy who's only a 1-year starter. Uh, but he's an athlete. He can move. He's got some shiftiness to him. He's got good hands. He's an effective receiver, as you'd expect for his time out wide. Uh, he's someone I think there's a lot of developmental potential with, and I don't think the Bears are going to draft a running back early by any means.
Right.
Just because Swift's been better, Monanga's been really good, but if you want mid-round depth, if you want like a late round guy to compete for that, you know to compete for playing time with Roshan Johnson or Travis Homer on special teams with the upside to be more than that down the line, uh, then Adam Randall's a guy that I really like. So him out of Clemson on day 3. I have like a 5th rounder on him right now. I could see him going
Okay.
higher depending on how he does at the combine, and I think he's going to the Senior Bowl too, I believe it is. So he'll have chances to boost his stock too.
Mhm. Well, Jacob, on that note, we'll end the live stream. Listen, thank you so much for doing this on this next to last day of 2025 season. I'd love to do this again during the off season, regardless of what happens with the Bears in the postseason. There's your cat there. I know we met in the Indianapolis earlier this year during the combine week. So
Yeah.
yeah, and it was really nice to hang out with you and your brother and your father there. And hopefully, do you plan on going there again this year if time and money permits?
I mean, I hope so. I
Well, you're in
haven't.
Chicago, so you're at least a little more closer now.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, it shouldn't be a massive deal. I haven't booked anything yet, and I haven't decided one way or the other. Obviously, that'd be a good time. Like, I'd love to do that. But haven't figured that out yet. So, I mean, as soon as I figure that out, obviously, like, I'll let you know. And likewise too, like if you book stuff from down in Indy, then obviously feel free to let me know too.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully we'll catch up there if timing is correct. So once
Absolutely.
again, Jacob Infante, please follow him on the X there at Infante24, I believe is your Twitter handle, correct?
Well, Jacob Infante 24, but yeah, it's the
Oh,
same.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, full name and then 24 at the end. Make sure to follow him if you're a Bears fan. And thank you to almost 900 people for joining me on this last live stream of 2025. Jacob, once again, hope you had a wonderful Christmas and happy holidays Happy New Year to you and your whole family. And keep up the great work. And we'll do this again, hopefully, at your time and discretion. Once again, thank you for your time today.
I appreciate it, Stephen. Thank you. Happy New Year coming in. Happy holidays to you and your family.
Thank you.
Love to run this back once the off season kicks off.
Absolutely. Once again, everybody, thank you very much, and Happy New Year, and we'll see you on the other side of 2026. So long, everybody.